Okay, so today we're going to start with the Mongolian Empire. We've been talking about them for quite a bit, but this will be a little bit more about them, and let's get started. So the Mongolian population was never very large, but they were able to conquer many areas because of their large army. They used crossbows and horses in battle. So this was the major thing. We kind of looked at them before and we said that they had advanced technology. Crossbow was huge. They also had the cannons, and they rode the horses, and that was awesome advantage for them. We got this guy, Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was their fiercest leader of the Mongol Empire. He expanded the empire to be the largest empire in history. In the early 1200s, Genghis Khan led the Mongols to capture much of Asia. Okay, so this guy was very successful in what he wanted to do. His grandsons, Kublai Khan and Batu, also led groups of Mongols to conquer other lands. They often used violence to capture cities. So they were not coming in there and being like, hey, you want to join up in our empire? We got a great thing going on. They were more like, draw the swords, get the crossbows out, let's charge with the horses. Europeans called them the Golden Horde because the golden color of their tents, of the Mongol tents. Mongolia lived north of China, which was now called in the modern days Mongolia. In the early 1200s, Mongolia's captured Beijing, Central Asia, and most of Persia. This section right here is Mongolia present day. This section here is China, India. Okay, these are the places that we've talked about. Here's Japan. So by 1294, the Mongols had conquered most of Asia. Leaders such as Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan expanded the Mongol Empire to be the largest empire in history. All of this orange is the Mongol Empire, okay? They start in this area right here. They come down. Here's Beijing. They take over Beijing, okay? And this is the capital of China even today, okay? They did try to go this way. They've taken up this coast, Korea, all this area. They tried to go more this way into Japan, but when they built the boats to go over there, there was a hurricane and it sunk all their boats. So Japan was actually saved by a force of nature. So they decided, okay, well, we're not doing that. Let's go this way. They were able to take over Persia, parts of Russia, Moscow, which is now the capital here of modern day Russia. They go into the Black Sea. Here is the Tigris and Euphrates. Here's the Indus. Here's the Ganges. They take over this and they become the greatest and largest empire in history. No empire has beaten them yet. Now, the only empire, now to talk about it, Roman Empire was another big one. The British Empire was really big. The British Empire had this slogan, the sun never sets on the British Empire, which meant that they had a place in the world, all over the world, but one continuous square mile footage, the Mongols win. Now, China under the Mongols. In 1271, Kublai Khan announced that he was starting his own dynasty called the Yun dynasty. Yeah, David says they never got the whole boat thing. Just stick to the horses, you know, and they got that going. The Mongol cavalry, which is a horse force, is the best in history. The Mongol navy, not too good. So Kublai Khan built the capital of his dynasty in Beijing. The Mongols helped China in many ways. They ended the 100 Years' War. There were all these little clans out there kept fighting and fighting for power. Mongols came in, they took over everybody and said, well, those civil wars are done now. We're in charge. So what happens when they stop fighting is the population began to grow. They built trade routes that linked China to India and Persia. But what happens is they also hurt the economy of China by imposing heavy taxes that farmers and merchants could not afford to pay. Okay, so the Mongols are like, you can keep all your stuff, you can keep living the way you live. The only thing that's going to be bad is you guys need to pay a big tax. All you guys need to do is sit back and pay attention to this one. We're just going through it, and I will have a video posted on the website, so if you need to go back. So contact with the Europeans. During Mongol rule of China, the contact between China and the rest of the world increased drastically. France and Italy both sent ambassadors to China, and Christian missionaries traveled to China to try to spread Christianity. Marco Polo, we've talked about him quite a bit, haven't we? Marco Polo was an Italian man that traveled to the China during the time of the Yun dynasty. Marco Polo was a famous merchant and explorer. He traveled to China and met Kublai Khan. Khan was very impressed with Marco Polo and hires him to be his personal representative. And he became famous for his writings about the Yun dynasty. His writings were responsible for how the rest of the world became aware of the life of the people in China. So let's talk about some of the problems between the Chinese and the Mongols at this time. The Yun dynasty did a lot to help the Chinese, but there were still problems between them. They spoke different languages, hard to communicate in that way, right? Chinese were not treated as equals by the Mongols, not great, especially since they were the ones being taken over. Now they're being treated not as fairly. Chinese people could not hold government positions. They could not hold positions of power that would have influence on the ways of their lives. So that is a tough way to be at that point. Mongol law punished Chinese people more harshly. If you did something wrong and you're Chinese, you would get a harsher punishment. So let's say, I don't know, a Mongol person and a Chinese person both stole this water bottle. Chinese person could get a month in jail while the Mongol person only has to give it back to them. Chinese people were not allowed to marry outside of their own people. One of the things that Kublai Khan said is he wants to keep the Mongol people pure. He wants to keep them, not mixed. So it says here Chinese people were not allowed to marry outside their own people. It's the same for the Mongols, though. So the Mongol group was over here, the Chinese group was over here, and that might have caused some problems because if they were able to marry, if they were able to mix, there'd be cultural diffusion. They could speak the same languages, and we could, it might have been a different kind of look here. Now, despite the problems, the Mongols did help China in several ways. They increased contact with Europe. They made local governments more responsible to the central government in Beijing. So first thing they do is they go, we got to trade, we got to trade, we got to trade, we got to make that money. Let's get in contact with Europe. Local governments, a lot of the times there was those civil wars like I was talking about. That was an issue because they were all trying to revolt, and now they all had to listen to the capital. And they led political reforms that gave more power to the emperor. So this is kind of the end of our little presentation here. I hope you guys learned something new about something old, especially about the Mongol.